Floor presses are a great exercise to help increase your lockout, increase the strength and size of your triceps. People are always asking the question, hey, how much you bench? Or how do I increase my bench press? Um, well, the answer is right here. This is the secret. The floor press is a great exercise. You got to go from a stopping position at the bottom where you're slightly resting your triceps on the ground, and then you got to press hard throughout the full range of motion of the lift. And here we're doing the floor press with an extra 140 pounds of chain weight, which is making the weights heavier at the top and lighter at the bottom. I have some flow presses for you today. The floor press has been a favorite of mine for years and years. It's a great strength builder for the bench press. It's also just a great pressing movement in general, in the fact that when you're stopping on the floor, as you can see here, stopping on the floor, you're not getting full range of motion. You can see I'm several inches away from my breasticles there. A few guys are a little closer than others, just depending on their body type, their body structure, and also how they bench press. I like to bench press a little higher, or at least start my angle a little higher than some of these guys. But I've always liked the fact that you had to stop and you had to start as well. You can see some of these guys are kind of doing more of a touch and go. The proper way to do a floor press is to really rest your triceps, if your triceps are big enough, or rest your elbows on the floor every single repetition and let that weight dissipate into the floor a little bit, and then violently reverse the weights back up. It's very similar to a box squat for the bench press, I would say. We have some floor presses for you on this night. This is a max effort movement that we use at SuperTraining Gym quite often, and it's a movement that I feel like I've gotten a lot out of over the years, both shirted benching and raw benching. Not really sure why the floor press is so effective, but it's been a huge staple in my training for many, many years. Part of the beauty of the floor press is that it is a partial range of motion, but even though it's a partial range of motion, typically it's a more difficult lift than a regular full range of motion bench press, due to the fact that you have to stop on the floor, touch both elbows, and then restart again. Make sure that you're not just coming up out of the bottom. The second that your elbows touch, make sure you're letting your triceps almost relax on the floor. See, as Mike did right there, especially on that third rep. The floor press is going to work the entire range of motion of the bench press, even though you're missing that bottom portion of the bench press. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more difficult than a bench press. So if you think sometimes by doing partial range of motion work that you're going to miss out on the benefits of full range of motion work, you're wrong. You just need to make sure that you're filling in the gaps with full range of motion work. If you're not doing any full range of motion work, then your full range of motion can suffer. But that's what assistance movements are for. If you do too much full range of motion, in my opinion, with a bench press, you can burn yourself out too quickly, and that's where dumbbells come in real handy.
I always loved floor presses. I always thought they were just they were great, and I built a pretty good bench around floor presses. I benched 832 in a shirt, and as I came back to the raw side, I continued using them primarily, as a secondary movement, because I do feel like they help your lockout a lot. And for a geared bencher, it just takes the stress off of having something go to your chest all the time. It's a nice movement to have to where you can lock out and build that tricep strength. But you've got to understand how to use them correctly. So many guys I'll see, they'll stay tight, they'll stay tight, they'll stay tight, and as soon as their tricep touches, and if you've got a big tricep that's going to be early, they reverse it. What you want to do is you want to come all the way down on the meat of the triceps and relax them to the point that if your tricep was flat, your elbow would touch the ground. You want to have complete release and then press. That teaches your triceps to fire through the hardest part of the motion, which is the middle, the middle portion up to the lockout. And I always try to do more reps, 2s, 3s, 5s, things like that with the floor press rather than the max singles. Just because I felt like the max singles on these movements don't necessarily always carry over truly to the single max in your discipline, whether that's raw or in a shirted bench. So My goal was to build those muscles. And you're not going to build those muscles necessarily with singles, and really not even with doubles. I think with triples, fives, sixes, things like that is where you're going to get the muscular development. And that's really what you're trying to do with any kind of accessory exercise, is build the muscle, eliminate a weakness, and then achieve peak performance on your competition movements.